All right, good morning, Selamat pagi. We'll talk about building the perfect service-based business website. So my name's Shaan, I'm from Singapore. I was one of the organizers of WordCamp Singapore, so if you were there, thanks for coming. I've run a web design agency in Singapore for about 10 years now. So that's kind of my details there, and you can connect with me later. But a little bit of a summary of what I'll be talking about this morning is essentially trying to build the right purposeful user flow. So whenever someone comes to a website, you sort of have 5 to 10 seconds to convey who you are and what type of service that you will be providing to that visitor. So it's a matter of making sure that we can do that consistently and provide the right type of information. So whether or not this is for your own website, if you're a web design agency or a service-based business, or you're selling these services to somebody else, there's some sort of best practice material that I'll go through here, which will help you convey that meaning. It'll also kind of help if you are just interested in web design to go from there. So we'll talk about sort of the problems of the industry. We'll talk about some mistakes that a lot of people will make on their homepages. We'll go through what I think and what studies show are kind of the best bits of information to have on a homepage. We'll go through a little bit of understanding about a purposeful user flow and what that means. Some more information about the benefit or the real reason behind having a homepage. And we'll kind of end with a couple of examples as well. So how did we get here? So web design is a fantastic industry. I kind of fell into it myself. I've always developed sites. I think my first domain name I bought was in the late 90s. So we were building sites on GeoCities and all sorts of stuff before that, GIFs galore and HTML tables and things like that. So I've always been involved in the industry, but have only recently taken it up as a career. So one of the good things about web design is that anyone can get involved, right? We're talking about people that are, I guess, anyone can get involved. So that means, if you're just a beginner at day one, you can go to the WordPress repository, download, set it up on a decent host, and get going and tinkering yourself. Sometimes that can lend people to think that they're a web designer and not necessarily have the back-end information required to be providing that service. So there's a lot in this industry, some good and some bad. So like I said, there's few barriers to entry, so anyone can get involved, and some of those aspects of design can be quite subjective, right? So it really depends on your audience or your client and where you need to be and when you need to take them. So we'll look at some horrible mistakes that some people make on their homepage or across any website in general. First one is that nobody can actually tell what you do. So sometimes you'll go to a website and they'll always talk about themselves, like we do this, we do this, we do that. It's easy to talk about yourself. It's hard to sort of talk in terms where you're actually solving problems for people. So it's like, we're a web design agency. Where does that stop and where do you go to next? Why is your web design agency or why is your business any better or any different than anybody else? So it's about sort of quantifying that in a few different ways. So what's the use of sort of doing anything if your customers can't tell why you're different or why you're better than anybody else? Otherwise, all your homepage will do is simply just confuse people. And like I said before, 5 to 10 seconds is all you have, generally speaking, for people to make a decision about that. So one example that I really like is from a US agency called Single Grain. As you can see, their USP, essentially helping great companies grow their revenues online. So as soon as you go to their website that they work with good companies and they work to grow your revenue. There's a little bit more information about there, basically saying that, we're not a traditional agency. We're not going to farm you off to a whole bunch of people. You'll speak directly to an account manager. They've actually redesigned this since I took this screenshot, so I had to go back in the Internet Archive to find this one. I think this is stronger than their current one, but I just think it's a good example. And then there's a straight call to action, which basically says, get a free consultation. In the top right-hand corner as well, you can see, get a free consultation. There's a phone number as well. So as soon as you go there, if you look no further than that single page, you pretty much have a good idea of who they are and how they can help you, and then how to get in contact with them. This is probably something that's come from a lot of clients rather than the agencies or businesses themselves, but everyone loves their own logo, and for some reason, a lot of people not design focused will think that their logo has to be, first and foremost the most important thing on their website. Well, while it's important to have your logo branding there, it's not the most important thing on your homepage, because it helps with your branding, but it doesn't always necessarily convey the meaning or the value that you'll be providing. One bad example is a university in the US, in Canada actually. They have their logo on the left-hand side, and they also have, for some reason, a text version of their logo in the middle of the website. It just really does nothing for them. There's also, it's quite a large area, so that doesn't really work, having it twice in this sort of above the fold section. There's also zero social proof. So this is something I talked about yesterday if you're at the Contributors Day when I was talking about WooCommerce, but it's important to have some type of social proof. Now this doesn't always have to be person A has purchased this product. It can be in the form of testimonials, it can be in the form of verified reviews, it can be in the form of blog content or anything like that. So this is just something to convince your audience that yes, this person is involved or this company is involved in this industry and they have opinions on certain things. So testimonials are a good thing to do. One example, and while this is sort of a service product-based business, this is not their homepage, it's a secondary page that you can click out to, but SendGrid, as you can see, these are the companies that they work with, right? So if you're looking at using them, you can be confident that other businesses like yours or other top-ranking businesses are using their service as well. They also have some stats, around 50 billion emails and over 80,000 customers as well. So you know that even if you chuck some money at them, that it's not going to disappear into the ether. So this one is a little bit tricky. So when you're looking at offering value, every business offers some type of value to their customers. It's about how you kind of explain that value to the end user. So you need to ensure that your unique selling proposition or UVP, value proposition, is upfront, and you're conveying that meaning straight away as soon as people land on your website. So it's another agency website. As you can see, theirs is pretty straightforward, right? They're a UX design agency, and they rapidly improve digital products in application with design, development, and collaboration. So if you're looking at them, as a service business, you're probably not going to steer towards contacting them, right? Because they grow digital products. Whereas if you are a digital product, they would probably be the right agency for you. So they've already niched down specifically and targeted their customer, their product-based customer applications as well. Again, I touched on this yesterday as well. People find it kind of strange that they have a website and they don't want to put up their contact information, maybe just a random email address somewhere. But I think it lends some authenticity or authority to the company that you can get in touch with them in multiple ways. Even just things like a WhatsApp message, a Facebook Messenger, email, obviously, and an address as well. I can't tell you how many websites I've been on that you can never actually find where they're based, so you never really know exactly who they are and what they're doing. So I think it's important to have that. You may not want people to turn up at your door. I've got a registered business address in Singapore, which is not my office, and sometimes I have people turn up there looking to find us, which is a bit inconvenient, but we at least have an address on there so people can send bits and pieces there. So I think that's important to have. So this is one example of Current House. They're a US agency as well, and if you look down in the bottom as well, there's a few ways to get in touch with them. They also have their call to action at the bottom, which basically says, you know, are you ready to get started? There's a few ways to get in contact with us. And while this isn't probably the strongest example, I think the single grain works a little bit better where they have their contact information in the top right-hand corner. It's a decent example to say, okay, we're at least on social, as our email address, and our physical address as well. And then people don't know what to do next, right? So you're at the top of your homepage and you've gone through various different stages, you know information about them, and then they don't know what to do next, right? So once you get to the bottom of the page, what are they doing next? Are you just giving them your Twitter feed? What action do you really want them to take next? Sign up now, or anything. So here's another example of that. So once you get down to the bottom of this page, basically it's an enthusiastic way of saying, let's get started, right? So write to us here, and then there's a little bit of their address details on the bottom. So once you get to the page and they've convinced you of the service that they offer, it's now to look at converting them. So let's take a bit of a step back and look at a little bit of theory around it, but we've covered some of those common mistakes, and let's look at how we can do things better. So the homepage isn't there to kind of fascinate and thrill your users. It's all well and good to have a few different JavaScript effects and CSS effects and things to pretty things up, but it's not really there to excite anyone. It's to convey a certain message. 4 pieces of information in a set order, right? So it's simple. Talk about what your business actually does. Show examples of work that you've done. Show what your customers think. And then show what you say. So that could be other services, other prices, and things like that. To put it simply, you could basically say, look, I'm going to introduce myself, establish a track record, gain their readers' trust, and then offer to help them as well. So once you understand how to think about that, about your homepage, or indeed any landing page that you want to build as well, you're ready to sort of go through the design methodology that we use as a business to design our client websites, which is called a purposeful user flow. There's a few examples or a little bit of theory around this. And an agency has done a lot of work in this in the past as well. So to define it, a purposeful user flow is an intentional flow of information with a well-defined direction that crucially do not involve your visitor having to jump back and forth through the navigation menu to find everything they need to know. So what that means is that they should be able to go through your homepage and navigate your whole website without really having to use the navigation menu. So an ideal pattern would be basically for a service business website or an agency would be a homepage which directs someone to like an about page or our approach type page, then focused on a services page on how you can help them, and then finally to a case study, and then a call to action, which is your contact page. So this is what it would look like in terms of a very small business. So you'd have your USP at the top, which then drives people to your capabilities page, which expands on that a little bit more, which will then go to a service page, which then has the same links in it, and then to a call to action at the bottom of a case study, or further to a call to action page as well. And it works for 3 reasons. 1, because it captures first-time users. They're uneducated, typically, when they come to your website. It depends when they've come through the right part of the sales funnel, but you're deliberately sending them through this funnel. And your goal is to not waste their time, right? And make sure that you're delivering as much value, or at least selling yourself as the best you can through that time as well. So if you only have a few seconds, or 10 seconds, what do you want them to know? And what do you want them to do? So positioning is the most important thing that you can have on your homepage, and why that should be abundantly clear to a first-time user. So the priority should be clear, it should be simple, it should be concise, and easily articulated as well. It's like your elevator spiel, like you'd be talking about people today. What is it you do? What does your business do? You should be able to convey that in, let's say, 5 to 10 words, as well as a strong call to action, specifically on a website. So you can quickly, efficiently redirect first-time users through a positionally focused message on the homepage to a subpage, essentially. You can orient that visitor, guiding them to a greater understanding of what you do. You also qualify them a little bit through that period as well, because they'll weed themselves out if they're not interested, or if you're not engaging them correctly. So step 1 is to learn about your company's capabilities, right? This is what you do, this is who you serve, and this is why you do it. So 3 things there, and those should be guided towards one or the next 2 steps, right? Which is digging into a more complicated or more in-depth version of a service, or contacting you for more details. So in many cases, they won't make a late change effort at this stage, but you need to move them on to step 2, which is learning more about your work. And essentially, this is a service landing page, so this is your capabilities. I do web design, I do web development, I do SEO, I do marketing. It's that information, right? So it should essentially explain that purpose and goal, and how you're going to help someone achieve their goals as well. It's all well and good to say I do Facebook marketing, but how is your Facebook marketing different than anybody else's, and what outcomes do you have to share with those users as well? And then step 3 is learning about the impact of your work, right? So I touched on it just then about your Facebook marketing, but basically a detailed case study which goes through the problem that the user came to you with, describe the form or describe the solution that you presented to them, and then prove that you're better or prove that it works by distributing some of the results, right? So this may be, you took someone's from 5,000 unique visitors per month, per year, to 10 or 15,000, and you should be able to get this information, maybe not straight away, but 30, 60 days after you've built the site. You should be able to deal back into analytics and see where you've been able to take them, and those are all measurable results that you can show. So people don't buy processes, they buy promises. They don't buy maps, they buy destinations, right? Although I have had a client buy my processes, but anyway. So a purposeful user flow works by capturing interested researchers who follow the bottom-up pattern. So data shows that people enter a website not always from the homepage, right? So they might come from SEO, they might come from your case study page, but if they come to your case study page, you probably won't have that much positioning information, or on your services page, you won't necessarily have a lot of positioning information. So people will go back to a homepage. So when a visitor does land on that for the first time, or directed by social media or something, they'll scan the content of that page, they'll decide whether or not it's relevant to them, they'll read it or they'll leave. So if they stay on, they will probably follow the links that you've said to related content, or they'll subscribe or go back to the homepage. Most data shows that they'll typically click on a logo or click on a homepage to really know more, because your homepage is typically your main positioning statement. So this kind of flow prevents people from losing focus, abandoning the site, and being caught in a sort of related post cul-de-sac, I guess. It helps sort of graduate users as well through this purposeful flow. So This is kind of what it looks like as well. So based on the example that we had before, you'd find that typically people are looking for a brand, or people are looking for a specific service, they may come to your homepage. If they're looking for a particular result, they'll typically be found further down the trail. So many eyeballs will be on the case study page, and then they'll always kind of come back to the homepage. That's sort of what that explains. It also works to provide opportunities to accelerate the path to contact as well. So making sure that there's always a call to action at every point. So every step of this flow should have a clear call to action directly related to the buying cycle. So as an example, this is from single grain as well, and this is like a typical buying process, right? So lead generation is when you're in awareness stage, so this is where you're sort of reaching out to people. Your lead nurturing, and that's sort of once you're informing about your product or your service. And then your convincing page, so that's typically your case study page or your contact page. So a purposeful user flow is more than just a particular arrangement. It requires a specific approach to the design as well. So we'll go through a couple of ideas about what the best home pages do and the home page's true purpose. So going to this example here, and this is kind of based on what we were discussing before, but you have a few opportunities to discuss what you do, what you've done, what your clients say, as well as what you say as well. So promises, results, social proof, and expertise. So that could just be your USP, this is what you do, your results, some case studies, some social proof testimonials, and then expertise could be some blog posts, even an Instagram feed, right? So while this is an idea, you don't have to be limited by design, which we'll talk about in a bit as well. So what you do, this is your positioning or your promise. So the main goal is to tell people what you do and how you can help them. Ideally, you want to say what you can do, which is horizontal positioning, and then who you can give the greatest impact to, which is your vertical positioning. The main goal is to guide that future prospect to take the next step and to learn more. So one example, this is a website out of Australia. They build really quick websites. I think a week or a couple of days they'll build it for you. But you pretty much know straight away they build high quality, beautiful websites at an affordable rate. Way to get in contact with them, and then they have a little video, the top right hand corner, a contact button, which is it stands out because it's a part of their branding as well. And again, the single grain example, which I quite like. Secondary, this is what you've done, right? So this is your work and your results, and the goal is to be brief. So usually a photo, a short description of this work as well. So 1 or 2 case studies is good, and the goal is to get them digging deeper into that website. So one example, this is from an agency called Kuala. Basically, you can see, right, so they're working with a company called the Mission to Seafarers, or an organization, and they did a complete overhaul of that website, download the case study. They actually have a very just short landing page as they're redesigning, so you can download that case study in a PDF form at the moment and see what that's at. So they've got 5 or 6 on that. Another one as well, this is from an agency called Purple Bunny. So they've done a mobile web application, and you can see there that it looks nice. There's a little bit of information around it, and there's a call to action to view that case study. So we'll look again here at what your client says. So this could be testimonials, and a satisfied client will always speak better than what you will. They'll be able to speak in your potential new client's language as well. So one example, an agency called Bigger Picture. So they basically just have a really large one here. I think there's no slider on it, but it loads at random. So I think they have 4 or 5 that come up. So you can present it this way. You can present it where there's 3 or 4 through a slider. Again, this is the new single grain site. I use that quite a lot. And then what you say, right? So this is your your content, this is your expert evidence, right? So blogs, white papers, webinars, videos, podcasts, news. A lot of companies tend to put this right at the top of the site because it changes most frequently. So people think, you know, if I have new information at the top of my website, then people will think it's new and exciting. Whereas it's more important to have your positioning at that point. So this is my example of some blog posts. So it pulls in Instagram, pulls in Twitter, and then there's a grid of blogs there. Another one through an agency called Adaptable, and you can see that they post semi-regularly as well, a couple a month. And I don't have a slide for it, but once we get to the bottom of the page, you then need to get in contact with someone. So a consistent contact piece of information on every page is good. Some people like to have a form on every page, like this one, or as you come to the bottom of the page, and this is Purple Bunny again, you have two options, right? So they're using purposeful user flow, right? So once you come to this bottom of the page, you have two options. One is to go to their About Us page, and the second one is to get in touch with them. They only have 4 pages on their website: homepage, about, our work, and contact. So you go straight through that whole workflow. Well, I went through that kind of structure. It doesn't mean that you have to have a horrible website at the same time and follow that same ethos. Doesn't really stay in the way of good design. So as long as you can clearly communicate these concepts, then and the order of priority is there, then you can be as creative as you like. So the most important thing is to show how the homepage's design works rather than how it looks. Here's one example, right, of 2 agencies. So we have agency on the left has a row listing, client qualifications, pain points. We can help if, you know, it's that second blue section as you look down. So the agency on the right has a row listing of services that they offer. Some agencies find this sort of necessary and some don't. It doesn't really matter. They're just designed to communicate the priority of their positioning. So this is one agency called Fuse. So once you have their UVP, there's a Malaysian agency actually in KL. Once you come down, they have a list of their services there, right? So you have their positioning, then you have their services, and then it goes into their case study information. And sometimes less is more, right? So it doesn't always have to chuck everything on your homepage. Like the Purple Bunny example I mentioned before, they have 4 simple pages plus a couple of case studies. But it's really simple to go through their website. You know exactly what they do and how to navigate through that site and make that decision. It's a little like the conversion rate optimization I was speaking about yesterday as well, where that you're always making sure that you give the user some type of option on what to do next, leading them down that funnel. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Very much. Now, this is the time of the talk where we have a little bit of time for Q&A. So first of all, Shaan, thank you very much. We've got a little gift there for you as a little thanks for the talk. Well done. So does anyone out there have any questions for Shaan about UI, how to better communicate from this talk? Yep, we got one up the back up there. There's a mic just here in the middle. We'll have a runner head out and do those. It takes a couple of seconds to come on.
Okay, you can listen there? Okay, hi, my name is Julian. I'm from the technology. Okay, I want to ask one question. Okay, how do you face the mobile first technology right now? Actually, I didn't see any slide touching that things.
It's essentially the same user flow on a mobile screen. You're just not giving as much information away, right? So once you come through a mobile experience, it's still very much the same user flow. Your design will change, but the same user flow still exists.
Okay,
So you will still come with positioning first, then with your case studies. You may not want 5 or 6 case studies on your mobile. You may just want 1 or 2 to make sure that people can get through those sections. But I think the ethos of that sort of design approach still works on mobile as well.
Okay, one more thing. Is there any ways that we can ensure that like we monitor that things is following our is workable or not?
It's really down to how you guys want to operate as an agency, right? So making sure that you guys are presenting that to the client and presenting that in some type of way that there is some research around it. A lot of the stuff that I've touched on today is from an agency out of the US called Newfangled. And so they have a lot more discussion around these purposeful user flows. So it's worth having a quick look through that as well. But making sure that you have a certain amount of time to convince someone. So the best way to do that is through positioning.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Okay, do we have any other questions out there? Yes, sir.
Hi, Hisham, blogger. I have a question about how much text to put up for what you do and what customers say about you.
So on the homepage, I'd be looking at enough information that you could convey to the end user that that's what you do. SEO-wise, given that there's 5 or 6 different sections through that homepage, you're probably going to have enough text in total to be ranking for that. And that's a whole different sort of topic on itself. But you'd probably be looking, your USP at the top, you'd probably be looking at one short paragraph about what you do and one, 5 to 10 words about, your unique value proposition. For the next session, testimonials can be hard, right? So you might have one testimonial that's huge and one that's one line. So on your homepage, you'd probably pick some that are of a similar length. And if you were to have a whole bunch that are at different length, you would go for something that's a little bit more like this one, right? Yeah. So that one shows not too bad. Whereas if you had one like this and it showed a huge one and a small one, it wouldn't be very good at all, right? So you can either edit those and then say back to your client and say, look, I've made a small amend to this. How do you feel with that? Or you can go with the approach with something like that. Around 300 to 500 words, I guess, total page should be fine. But case studies, you probably only want to give them a short snippet, like these ones. Yeah, something like that would be fine. Always call to action to explore more, though.
Okay, do we have further questions? Yes.
Good enough.
Hi, I have a question. Is it possible to make only a single page website instead of multi-page website for agency, software agency?
It is definitely for the homepage, but I think conveying all that information across one single page is probably too much. If we're looking at this information here, I think that's fine to all stay on one website or one single page, but you still want to give people more. So giving a whole case study on a homepage is going to be too much information. And to be honest, I'm not really ready at that point in order to know that information. So you're kind of overwhelming them with a little bit too much. But if you're looking at just building a really simple site for a one-pager, then I think this workflow still works. You just want to be careful on how much information you give to them because you don't want to overwhelm them before they really are convinced on what you can do.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much for that feedback. Can we all give Shaan a round of applause for his talk today? Thank you very much.